everybody, and welcome back to the Girly Girl Bookworm. So today I have for you my July wrap-up part 1. So I have a couple books to wrap you up on from June, and then I have a bunch of books for July. So let's just dive in. So I finished the audiobook for Death at Greenway by Lori Raider Day. I started this one last month, and unfortunately this one was a bit of a letdown for me. So this is about basically the Blitz, where they are trying to get children out of London and into the countryside. And we're following a nurse who she gets in trouble with where she is, and they basically want to take her off her job so that way she could kind of earn her way back. So they're like, you're going to go be a nanny to these kids at this like house while they are away from their family. And she's like, ugh, she doesn't want to go, but she goes anyways. This house ends up being Agatha Christie's house, and they end up finding a dead body. So it has all the entrapment of like, this is going to be fantastic. Agatha Christie's house, a murder, mystery, the set, and just like everything sounded good. And then it just was meh. Like, this is like 400 pages of like nothing. Ultimately nothing. And like the mystery in Agatha Christie is so like minute. Like it just felt like they were like, you know what? This story might not sell so great, so let's like throw a buzzword of Agatha Christie in it and people will buy it. Like I did. And I fell for it because she was barely in it. The mystery was very like not really there. It was more of like a coming of age story for this nurse and finding herself, and kind of she has like a little bit of a romance in here. Like it was more focused on like her journey during this time period than like the mystery. So unfortunately, very misleading, not that great, 3 stars. Then I also read Last to Vanish by Megan Miranda, and guys, this started off so strongly, and then it all fell apart. So this book, I think it just recently came out. I can't remember the release date. It comes out this month. So if it has not come out yet, it's coming out soon. This one follows this girl who works at a hotel that is like right off the Appalachian Trail, where a lot of people like that want to hike come. It has been known for lots of missing people. And one night this guy comes to stay, and he is like the brother of one of the guys that has gone missing. And he wants to like kind of figure out what happened to his brother. It was boring. It started off so strong. Like I felt the creepy vibes. I loved the setting. Like the setting is perfect. But then I just was so bored. Like I didn't even care by the end. I was like, I just need to get to the end because I kind of need to know who did it. And like the kind of who did it kind of came out of like complete left field. Like it never really felt like a mystery either. Like I didn't know what we were doing half the book. So unfortunately I gave it 3 stars, and it was a complete bummer because I was really looking forward to this one, and it was a huge miss for me and Megan Miranda, unfortunately. But once we started in July, I started off on a really good high note where I read The Royals Next Door by Karina Hale finally. And I loved this book. I gave this book 5 stars. I found it so sweet. It was exactly what I needed, because I think at that point, like, I'd been reading so many like thrillers and so many just like the same type of story, and I just needed a break. So I picked this one up, and it was exactly the palate cleanser that I needed. We're following a girl. She is living on this island. Oh, that just sounded really weird. This island off of Canada. She's a teacher. She's kind of like a shut-in for the most part. She ended a bad relationship, so like she doesn't really know many people in the community, even though she is a teacher. Her mom is dealing with a lot of mental illness, so she is her mom's primary caretaker essentially. And next door in moves basically Meghan Markle and Prince Henry. I don't follow them very well. Whatever that couple is, like they were definitely the inspiration of them. They move next door because they're trying to get away from England for a little bit, take a little respite, take a little break. And they end up moving in next door, and she kind of butts heads with their bodyguard, and they end up kind of sparking this like bantery relationship. And I just found it super sweet. She's a romance podcast, like book podcaster, which was just so fun. Like that was such a fun element. I loved the discussion about the romance genre community and the like biases against it that people like who aren't romance readers don't understand. And it was just super fun and enjoyable, and I couldn't get enough of it. So I'm so glad that I finally read it because I gave it 5 stars. And then I also read This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. Now this one started off a little slow. I think I was just in a weird slumpy mood, and I'm going to blame it on that because I was like, oh man, maybe I just DNF it. Like I came close to DNFing it because I was just in a weird mood, and I like read 50 pages. I stopped reading it for a bit. Like I felt like I wasn't feeling it, and then it picked up, and I was like, oh, never mind. This is why I wanted to read this book in the first place. So we're following our main character. She's about to turn 40. She's kind of just like, her dad's sick and dying, and she's just not really satisfied with where her life is at this given moment. And she's the eve of her 40th birthday, and suddenly she wakes up, and she's 16 again. And there's her dad, epitome of health at that point, and she needs to figure out either like how to get back or why is she there, like what's going on. And I gave this one 4.5 stars. Like I said in the beginning, I was kind of like, well, but I think by the end, I finally like realized like why I wanted to read it, and it was totally enjoyable. And I'm mad at myself that I almost DNF'd it, because I would have been really mad at myself, like knowing that it was actually good and that I almost DNF'd it. So 4.5 stars. I've been just like all about the magical realism lately. If you have any other magical realism books for me, please recommend them down below, because I feel like that's all I've been really wanting lately is this like magical realism vibe. 4.5 stars. Then before I left for the Cape, I decided to pick up Blood Will Tell by Heather Chavez, because the Novel Cult book club was reading this to Zoom with the author, which we just Zoomed with the author last night. So I knew I wanted to get it done before the Cape, because I didn't want this whole like hanging over my head during the Cape, because it was the Zoom was last night and we were coming home yesterday. So like I knew that like I needed to have it done. So I ended up picking it up. This is about 2 sisters, Izzy and Frankie will basically do anything to protect Izzy. Something happened about 5 years ago prior. Izzy went off to a party and one of the people did not come back. We know something bad happened that night, but we're not sure what. And Frankie has always kind of like, it's never left Frankie's mind, essentially, about what happened 5 years ago. Now there's an Amber Alert out for another girl, and we are starting to think about things that could potentially be tied. So the past is kind of coming back out to get us, and we're really taking that look of like what happened 5 years ago. What did Izzy do? Is Izzy doing something again now? I gave this 3.5 stars because it was addicting. I got through this 400-page book in 2 days. I couldn't put it down. It felt very young adult in the writing style for me. Like it was very simplistic, and because I think with the alternating perspectives of the like what happened 5 years ago, and she was essentially a teenager, like a young adult at that point, like it felt young adult. And then the twist happened, and it left a weird taste in my mouth that I didn't love. It also slightly felt a little bit where Heather Chavez, I don't know if she necessarily did a lot of research, because like I said, there's that Amber Alert about a girl who goes missing, and our main character is almost essentially like looked at, and then the cops like never talked to her again. And like the way they talk to her, like you would think that they would be involved and they'd be constantly like in and out of the story, and they're not. So it just felt like there were like little things that like felt plot holey without being plot holey. Like it was hard to describe because it was so addictive. Like I couldn't stop reading, but it also felt like there was like so much that I just was like questioning. So 3.5 stars. Like it was a decent read, just not my next new favorite by any means. I listened to the audiobook finally for A Low Country Bride by Preslasia Williams. This is the first book in a series, which I will probably just be done with this one. This one had all the parts of like a good book, but like she felt like she was trying to do too much. We're following Maya, and she is a wedding dress designer. She's working for this like very famous like wedding dress designer, and she's up for kind of possibly a promotion, but her father ends up breaking his hip down in Georgia, South Carolina. So he breaks his hip, and she's like, I need to go take care of my father. I need to go. And her boss is kind of like, well, if you think so, but like you're not getting paid, but also do work for me while you're not getting paid. Like her boss is awful. And so she decides to go down to help her father anyways. And while she's there, she ends up meeting Derek, who is trying to run this like bridal shop there that he has come into. He's a widower. He's a single father. And like I said, this book had all the pieces of something that could have been really great, but it tried to do too much. So we had the like microaggressions with work. We had she was dealing with sickle cell anemia, which I think was really cool. Like, I thought that was a really interesting thing because I don't know too much about that, so I thought that was like interesting. Widower, single father, a business that's dying. I'm trying to even like think, like there was just like so much. I think there was like another, I can't even remember. Like I said, like it just, there were so many topics that like it tried to address in such a short book that nothing felt like it was like well done. Like it just like would touch it and like just put this in your head, but like we're never gonna fully address it. So like it just felt like there was like, I just wish it picked a couple things to like really target, and then like I think it would have been fleshed out a little bit better, because also then we're dealing with her dad, and like he's kind of trying to date again, like so there was just too much. She was also like, she had a really bad relationship in the past, and like she like, so it's like it was trying to do, but I can't even talk about it because it was trying to do too much. 3 stars. It was okay, just too much. Then I read It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I was so excited to finally read this one. I read this one through Hoopla on my phone at the beach. So this one is following Piper. This has been compared to Schitt's Creek. Piper is kind of supposed to be like your Alexis, where she's like rich and she's got lots of money, and she makes a mistake. And her ex, like her boyfriend of 3 weeks, breaks up with her, so she decides she's gonna get revenge, and something ends up happening, and her stepfather, who is basically why she has so much money, is like, you know what, you need to learn your lesson. You need to learn what it's like to earn your own money and figure it out. So he sends her to this like fisherman town in Washington, which turns out to be like her real father's like home. When her father died, her mom just kind of was like, I can't be here anymore and I need to go. So she took the girls and left. And so when he died, he actually left the bar that he owned for the girls. So he's like, you're going to go to the bar, you're going to go live above the bar for at least 3 months, and you're going to see if you can learn your lesson before you come back. So she goes, her sister goes with her, and they end up becoming part of this town. And of course there's this grumpy fisherman that they start off right off the bat with this like rough connection, but then obviously it turns into a romance. I thought it was really sweet. I gave it 4 stars. It did get a little like insta-lovey in my opinion. They know each other for 5 weeks and they're constantly like, oh, I love you, and like moving in, and like it just, the relationship moved extremely fast for the amount of change that this character had to go through. But I still thought it was really fun. I really loved the setting, and I will obviously continue on with the duology because I have the second book. So I'm excited to see what Hannah's book is like, because Hannah and Piper were so different. So I'm excited to see what Hannah's book is like. Then I picked up The Beach Trap by Allie Brady. This is a author duo. I follow, let's see, make sure I get her name right, Bradley Godfrey. I follow her over on Instagram. So when I saw that she was publishing a book, I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to pick it up. So this is kind of like inspired by The Parent Trap. There's these two girls, they go away to camp and they find out that they're half sisters, and it completely sets them off. One of them is just like, feels completely betrayed. So they don't talk for another like 15 years. Their father dies and leaves them this beach house. And that is like the grandfather's beach house. So one of them has like all these memories attached to it, the summers that they spent there. And she doesn't want to sell it, obviously, but she also kind of needs to, but doesn't want to. And then the other one, who was raised by her grandparents, wants to sell the house because her grandfather really needs some intensive health care right now. And the only way she could pay for it is if she sells this house. But the only problem is the house is pretty dilapidated at this point. So in order to really make any money on it, they need to fix it up in order to sell it. So it's following this summer relationship. I love that it had like personal growth in here. It had relationships that were familial. They had relationships with men, so romantic relationships, so self-romance, and like sisterhood, which I always love when it can follow multiple types of relationships. I thought it was a fun read. Kat, who is the sister, like the main sister that like was raised with their dad, she was kind of irritating to read from, to say the least. I felt like her development could have happened like she felt so immature, and I'm sure that's like the whole point, but like she was so immature in the fact that she blamed her half sister for everything. And I was like, she was a kid, like there's no way you could blame her for everything. Like it was just like wild how much she was like so mad at her, and I'm like, you're mad at the wrong person. Like, and that's what like kind of ticked me off, because like it took her a long time to like figure that out. So I still enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Perfect beach read. Just Cat I could do without. I thought I just messed that up. And then I read Stay Awake by Megan Golden. I finished that one on the drive home yesterday. Guys, this book I could not put down. I started it a little bit right after I finished The Beach Trap on Friday, and then I finished it, like I said, Saturday on the drive home. I couldn't put this book down. This book had me so paranoid. I think because the main character is so paranoid. This woman wakes up one day and she has no idea who, like, where she is. She has no clue anything really about her. Like, the last thing she remembers is like answering a phone, and she's got like all these markings on her hands that are like, stay awake, don't go to sleep. Like, you forget who you are if you go to sleep. So she's like freaking out. She has no idea where she is. She like goes to her house, and it's not her house. So she's like so confused. And then we're also following another perspective of these detectives who they find a dead body, and essentially they think that as they're like going through the case, they think it's her that did it. And she starts like catching like news glimpses, and she's seeing like that in the window there's like stay awake signs, which is very similar to her hand. So she is like freaking out because she thinks she's murdered someone. So she's like trying to avoid the cops. She's trying to figure out what's going on in her life. Every time she falls asleep, she forgets everything. And we find out that every time she wakes up, she's actually reverting back to something that happened 2 years prior. She remembers 2 years ago. She doesn't remember the last 2 years of her life. So we're trying to figure out, like, why does she not remember the rest of her life? We're going back in the perspective of 2 years ago of what happened. We're following her now as she's completely paranoid. She's also paranoid in the past perspective, too, because she feels like she has a stalker, so she's, like, paranoid there, too. We're following these cops who are hot on her trail, and, like, did she actually kill this guy? We don't know. It was a wild ride. Wild. And I gave it 5 stars. It just was so unputdownable. I could not stop reading, and I can't wait for another Megan Golden book, because now I have to wait again for another book by her. And that was, I feel like she just continues to get better. Escape Room was like, okay. The night Swim I gave 4.5 stars to, I think, and now Stay Awake I gave 5 stars to. So she is just like one of those authors that I feel like just keeps getting better, and I am obsessed. I did attempt to start After Hours on Malago Street by Angela M. Lopez. This comes out July 26th, and I got 80 pages in, and I'm just, the writing style is just not doing it for me. The main character's just not doing it for me. We're following our main character, Alex, and something goes wrong with her job in Chicago, so she decides, she like calls up her sisters, and she's like, let's buy grandma's bar from her before, so that way like she's got money to take care of herself for the rest of her days. So they decide they're going to ambush the grandma and be like, hey grandma, like we need to buy this bar from you. So she decides to go, and like she goes to the bar that night, and she ends up bumping into this tenant, because the grandma also like rents part of it out to like people who can't afford other places. She bumps into this tenant, and they basically have sex right away. Like it literally was in like the first 2 chapters or something. Like it was like wild how fast it happened. And then the grandmother essentially is like, no, you're never here for me. Why would I suddenly just like give you my bar? Also, I have other offers on the table for this bar, including the tenant who wants to buy it so that way he could turn it into like a historical society thing. And she's like, oh no, you didn't. Like, you're not taking my family away from me. And she's just very brash and very overbit. Like, in the 80 pages that I read, I feel like nothing happened besides her being annoying. And I just hate it. I like really wanted to enjoy this book because she's also Mexican American, and there's like that whole culture put in here. There's also apparently a ghost story going on. I haven't really figured out what that was about. But I just, I'm so bummed that like I'm not liking this one. I may put it on hold for now and maybe go back to it eventually, but right now I'm bummed. I'm not a huge fan. I'm only 1 chapter in, but my next book that I'm going to be reading is Under the Southern Sky by Christy Woodson Harvey. My hold for the ebook came available yesterday, so I started the first chapter. I'm liking it so far. The very first chapter, we meet a character who finds out that her marriage is over when she like writes this article about like how great it is that like her and her husband have this modern love story about how like they're not going to have kids and what they're going to do instead of having kids. And she's so excited about her article, she runs home and finds her husband with another man. And she realizes her marriage is over, and she kind of essentially like realizes along the way that maybe like the only reason why she doesn't have kids is maybe because her husband's gay, but also because she found out that she was infertile when she was really young. But she kind of is starting to have that urge of like, what would it be like to have a kid? What would it be like to have fluttering kicks in your stomach? Like, what would that be like? Based off of what I kind of read on the back, it sounds like one of the characters it was a married man, and that his wife died, and they still had babies that they were going to, embryos that they were going to do through IVF, and now they have to decide what to do. So I'm almost curious, like, if they're going to hook up, and then, like, she'll get to know what it's like to have babies. I don't know. I'm interested, though, so I'm excited to see what the rest of that is like. And then physically, I'm probably going to start, I should have grabbed it. Physically, I'm probably going to start The Hotel Nantucket. And then on audio, I have 2 options, and I haven't decided, so I'm not going to tell you what those are. But yeah, that's what I've read so far for the first half of July. What have you read so far? Let me know down below, and I will see you guys really soon. Bye, everybody.